Hello there, my very good friends. Andy here for What Culture Wrestling, and as we begin to wind down now on our post-WrestleMania content, I thought it'd be fun to sit here and dive into some observations that we learned from sitting in the building versus the prevailing reactions online. I think it's always interesting to take a look at these contrasting perspectives and see if anything's different, because it's quite common that you'll go away from a show that you've attended feeling really high, feeling really positive, and then you'll go and look online and everybody's pissed. Now, both of these perspectives are entirely valid. If you watched at home and you did not have a good time, fair enough. Can't argue with that, because I didn't watch at home and I don't have the same perspective. But at the same time, if you're in the building, you can't really tell someone that something they enjoyed sucked. So, hey, it's a whole spectrum of opinions. We're going to dive into some of them here. Some of the things that stood out to me personally in the building at WrestleMania 41. Starting off with number 10, night one was a lot louder in the stadium. So, an interesting facet of online discussion that I found after night one, Saturday, was a lot of people mentioning, oh, the crowd sucked. The crowd were so quiet. Why weren't the crowd making any noise? They weren't invested in anything. What's going on? That did not come across at all in the stadium. People were up for the big moments, especially the opener, Jey Uso versus Gunther, and the main event, of course, which was CM Punk versus Seth Rollins versus Roman Reigns, with all the Paul Heyman business in between. But people were pretty invested throughout the whole show. So it was quite surprising to go online and see people going, oh, it was so quiet. It was like a library. I can only imagine that this is some kind of production thing, right? If that noise did not translate to you viewing at home, it's probably because it wasn't mic'd up particularly well. Maybe the crowd were too low in the mix. Something along those lines. Now, WWE is obviously a very pristinely produced promotion, Triple P, but sometimes things like this just happen. We have actually seen a bunch of audio gaffes from the company this year, particularly when it comes to Raw and censoring curse words that sometimes they don't censor and sometimes they censor the wrong word. It's a whole mess of things, but it was a lot louder in the building. It kind of sucks that did not come across on screen, but hey, look, they'll probably just pipe in some cheers over the top of the recording anyway, because that's kind of what they do.
Thanks so much for watching this video and supporting our channel. You know who else support our channel? Surfshark, who are sponsoring all of our WrestleMania content from here in Las Vegas. Surfshark's VPN is amazing. You can make sure all of your stuff stays private and secure when you're out and about online, and they have a 30-day money-back guarantee. Not only that, but it allows you to change your virtual location to access all of your favorite content, which means you can watch all of WWE shows on Netflix, not just Raw, but SmackDown and NXT too, with no ads. And you get to see all the bonus content us Brits get to see too. Stuff like this. Booyaka! Booyaka! 619! Just click the link in the description and use code WhatCultureMania at checkout to get 4 extra months of Surfshark VPN.
Okay, number 9, Saturday Night Raw. So, there were a couple of matches on this show that didn't really feel that they had the build that would make them worthy of the biggest show of the year, and I don't think that was any more apparent than on night one during the New Day versus War Raiders. Now, these are two excellent teams, and I am sure that if this had been built up over, 1, 2, 3 months, they'd have had a much more bigger and more invested match at WrestleMania. Unfortunately here, it just felt like a Raw match, man. Like, in terms of the level of the crowd investment and stuff, as soon as they started hitting the ring, people just made for the concourse. They went to get food, they go to the bathroom, and during the match itself, the level of crowd investment just was not there. People were not connecting with this at all. It's a real shame, because these are 4 extremely talented pro wrestlers. They didn't have the best match, admittedly. You know, it wasn't terrible or nothing like that. But it just didn't hit the heights that it could have, and at the same time, people were not hooked on what was going on in the ring. This is the fault of the bookers. They did not put the work in to make people invested and tell a story with these dudes and build things in the right way for the biggest show of the year. It's a shame, but it should be a lesson for next year. If it's happening on WrestleMania, it should feel worthy of the biggest show of the year. But look, shout outs to these two teams. I like them both. It just wasn't right for the show or the situation. Number 8. Joe Hendry has cracked America. My goodness, the pop for this man as he came out to face Roman Reigns. No, he didn't face Roman Reigns, did he? Face Randy Orton. It was completely insane. Completely insane. So the build-up to the reveal of the mystery opponent was really well done. Randy Orton had a whole ass video package. He got a promo in the ring saying come on, someone, come here, fight me. They paused for a little moment, they let it hang in the air, the doors opened. In the entrance, Joe Hendry turned around and did his thing, say his name, and he appears. He got a thunderous reaction on night 2. It was absolutely cataclysmic. And it's really cool. It's really cool to see. He's had the Royal Rumble and WrestleMania in the same year. Yeah, obviously it was a very short match with Randy Orton, but it was fun. It was fun. And he's probably delighted with how everything panned out. Extremely over. People love the bit. They love the character. They love the man. You cannot say enough positive things about his crowd connection, I don't think, in this year. How far can it go is my next question. Like, we made it to WrestleMania. He's been through NXT a couple of times. Obviously, he's the TNA World Champion. How far can they take this? I'm really interested to find out, but fair play to him. Look, he's been wrestling for a long time. And he's worked extremely hard to get this kind of reception from people. I have nothing but admiration for that, to be honest. It's just a really nice feel-good story, and the USA loves their big, strong Scottish boy. It's awesome. Number 7, Dominic Mysterio, babyface king. I did not see this coming at all, my very good friends. Let me tell you, Dominic Mysterio in the Intercontinental title 4-way was like I think he was actually the most over babyface on the entire show. And these shows had Steve Austin and Becky Lynch and Cody Rhodes. Cody got booed a fair bit. But yeah, like some of the biggest names you can possibly imagine. And to be fair, right, in the Intercontinental title 4-way, Finn Balor in particular did a really good job of just being a nasty little prick to Dom and healing it up throughout, which really oodled the sympathy on him and really made it feel like more of a babyface coming out party for Dom. But Dom's reactions were thunderous, man. It didn't matter if he was doing the 619, if he was going for a pinfall, if he was breaking a fall up. People went crazy for him, and it's a really interesting pathway that he has taken. He started off obviously as a babyface, and struggling to kind of find his feeting when he was feuding with Seth Rollins and all that stuff, and not really being the most convincing dude in the world. And then he turns heel and joins the Judgment Day, and it starts off as this thing where they're piping in jeers and all of this stuff, and it's like, oh gosh, this isn't real. But then it gets very, very real, and people realize, hey, booing this guy is fun. I'm having a great time taking the piss out of Dirty Dom. He gets over as one of the biggest heels in the mid-card, and now he's the king of the baby faces. It's a really remarkable trajectory. I think his IC title win was one of the most celebrated moments of the entire show. Either night, hats off to him. It just, I did not see this coming at all, despite the groundswell of support for him in the build-up to the show. And I guess Dominic Mysterio is a de facto babyface now. Who the heck knows what's going on? It's a weird time to be alive. Let's move on to number 6. People are ready to cheer Drew McIntyre. Although Drew was technically the heel in his Sin City street fight with Damian Priest, which was really good, he really wasn't booed at all throughout the night. Maybe little pockets here and there, but people were really enjoying the big man, and maybe it suggests that at some point in the not so distant future, maybe he's going to go face again. It's interesting because he's a really strong heel, obviously, and he's proved that in his programs, particularly with CM Punk. But I think it's just a case of him being too awesome to hate for too long. How many people do you know can pull off grabbing a phone from the crowd, taking a selfie, and then just rolling right through? He's done it 2 years in a row now. He rules. It helps, of course, that the match with Priest was so fun and impactful and hard-hitting. But yeah, I feel like people are just ready to cheer Drew McIntyre again, and I feel like before long, maybe WWE are going to start capitalizing on that with a big old POOOSH push. Anyway, number 5. Speaking of cheers, Jey Uso earned it. Now, a lot of online discussion about this one, about Jey Uso versus Gunther. Should Jey Uso have tapped Gunther out? Should he have submitted him? Should he be World Heavyweight Champion? All of this stuff. Is he the best wrestler alive? No, not necessarily. But at the end of the day, this man is unbelievably over. So this is anecdotal, so it doesn't necessarily mean a whole lot. But walking around Las Vegas this week, Yeet shirts are everywhere. Everywhere. You cannot round a corner without seeing at least one person in one of Jay's shirts. And the entrance is obviously, the most engaged crowd-wise entrance in wrestling at the moment. People love it. And then during the match itself, was it some kind of 19-star classic? Probably not, but it was it was plenty effective for what it needed to be, and the building was hanging on every Jey Uso spot and near fall. People were connected for this. Now, how long does the title reign last? By the time I'm recording this, he may have even lost on Raw. I have no idea. We'll see. So forgive me if we're a little bit outdated here. But look, people are super into the building. I've always thought that this backlash to Jey Uso and his ascension, which I do understand the reasons for, I've always thought it was more of an online thing than an in the building thing, and the proof is in the pudding. The pudding in this case is just incredible crowd reactions. He's there because he's extremely over, and you can't really, if you've been there in the building for one of his entrances, you know exactly what I'm talking about, and the matches, to be fair. But yeah, he's in a really good spot, and I think sometimes it's important to realize that your criticism might not necessarily be reflective of what's going on inside the buildings themselves. Number 4, faces and heels dead? Question mark. This is an interesting one to talk about in general, because we've just spoken about people getting some surprising reactions and some people getting unsurprising reactions, Jey Uso. But man, face heel alignments in WWE, they don't really matter all that much anymore, and that's not necessarily the best thing in the world. This whole business is predicated on goodies versus baddies. The whole point is that the hero eventually vanquishes the villain in the end. But when you watch things like John Cena versus Cody Rhodes, and people are booing the hell out of the hero Cody Rhodes, who's been cheered all year, and they're cheering for John Cena, it's, we're in this kind of moments economy when it comes to WWE. People aren't necessarily looking to get behind the big damn hero and you evildoer, curse you. A lot of the time they're just there for the big moments. They just want to see the cool stuff. They want to see the returns. They want to see the entrances. They want to see the finishes and the screw jobs and the twists and the turns and all that stuff. It's why WWE is a very different wrestling product to anything else on the planet, which is both good and bad. In a lot of different ways. But yeah, traditional faces and heels in this company, this isn't necessarily a new observation, but watching the show on Saturday and Sunday really hammered that home, that this is a moment's first promotion above all else. People want to cheer for the big, viral things, the clips that go wild on the internet afterwards, and they're not necessarily thinking about character alignments and virtue and what's a good word? Evildoery. Is that a word? I don't know. Let me know in the comment section below. Number 3. WWE wasted Steve Austin. Look, Steve Austin came out and announced the attendance on night 2. He was there on night 1 with Bret Hart as part of the Hall of Fame ceremony, and on night 2, when the glass shattered and he came down, he got an incredible pop. Of course he did. It's Steve Austin. Las Vegas went completely ballistic for Steve, even as he turned the wrong way on his way to the ring, and then finally came down in his ATV and hit that barricade. I hope the person who was hurt by that is doing okay. He announced the attendance, he flung his cards in the crowd, all of that stuff. Look, man, it's Steve Austin. Number 1, on night 1, you kind of reduced him to second fiddle to Triple H. And yes, I know Triple H is the headliner for the Hall of Fame, but he's just standing there like a spare piece, him and Bret Hart both. Could you not have had them both come out to their music? You can do Triple H afterwards, it's fine. Was Paul Levesque just scared that the Steve Austin and Bret Hart were going to steal his pop? Yeah, probably. He's a very insecure man. That's how it works. And then on night 2, man, reducing Steve Austin to the attendance reader. Come on, if you've got that guy in the house and you have the glass shatter moment and it's this most incredible pop, use it for something a bit more significant. I think, he wasn't there last year, he was there this year, so you didn't pay him enough money to show up last year, and this year you did pay him the money, but you just had him read a card and stand there for the Hall of Fame. That's whack to me. Steve Austin should have done a little bit more, whether it was getting involved in the main event or whatever. I'm sure you could come up with, it's Steve Austin, for goodness sake, come up with something. Number 2, people really wanted The Rock. So I think much of the negative reaction to the ending of WrestleMania 41, and particularly the Cody Rhodes versus John Cena match, revolved around the non-appearance from The Rock. It almost felt like we were waiting for it from the moment the bell rang for the first time to the moment John Cena won. Instead, we got Travis Scott. Obviously, that stuff hasn't sat well with people. Cody hitting one of the wildest crossroads ever. He kept those receipts for those punches, Travis Scott. But there was no sign of The Rock. Now, obviously, we haven't seen we hadn't seen, I should say, just in case he has shown up since I recorded this, The Rock between Elimination Chamber when John Cena turned and WrestleMania itself. There's no real connective tissue there in the storytelling. In fact, it's a pretty gaping black hole in the narrative of this whole thing. So people were right. People were conditioned to expect The Rock. We've been conditioned through these WWE main events to expect the massive pops and the big moments and the returns and the interferences. It's kind of like this symphony of overbooking that sometimes is awesome and people love, and sometimes it doesn't land as well. I think the night one main event is a good example of a match you might call overbooked that really landed with the crowd and everyone liked. But yeah, people in Vegas were itching for the final boss. He didn't show up, and when he didn't show up, they were not best pleased. Now, I will say the reaction in the building wasn't quite as sour as it was online. People around us were still having a good time. But when you condition people to expect these things and they don't get them, they're going to be annoyed, and that's what happened here. And at number one, WWE might, and I stress might, be cooling off. Now, look, business is incredible. They announced 60,000 plus for both nights. Whether or not that's the real number, who knows? I'm sure we'll get a turnstile count or something coming through. And these tickets were extremely expensive, so they're going to make a lot of money from these shows. Their market share is in no problem whatsoever. They've just bought AAA, which, you know, the consolidation of power in the wrestling business is not something I'm in favor of. Doesn't matter who the company is. But man, just looking at some of these reactions and feeling some of the mood in the building during these shows, it wasn't the celebratory carnival that we had last year. Now, you know, was WrestleMania 40 a perfect show? No, absolutely not. But it was a great one from a WWE standpoint, and people left the building generally feeling gratified and like the money was well spent and all of this stuff. But with things like the reaction to the night 2 main event and the ending of the show, and things like you know, the general quality of night 1 not sitting all that well with people. I think a common perception amongst a lot of people was that night 1 was maybe a mid show saved by a really good main event, and night 2 was a really good show hampered by a mid main event, or maybe harsher or more extreme if you want to go that way. The fact is that there are criticisms going around surrounding WWE in the wider wrestling circle that simply were not being had last year. Now, will that lead to anything long term? Who knows? They might, in the next couple of weeks, turn everything back around and get everyone back on side. And I will say, I do think the majority of reactions to WWE are still positive, but it is something to monitor. It is something to pay attention to. These things come and go in cycles. And you never know when boom periods are going to start down swinging or when they're going to pick back up again. But hey, thank you for joining me for this video. Some live observations from attending WrestleMania 41. My voice is absolutely cooked if you couldn't tell already. And if you enjoyed this video, check out the 100 greatest WrestleMania moments on your screen right now. If you were pissed at WrestleMania 41, you'll enjoy these. You'll have a good time. Bye.